Okay.
Good morning, good afternoon, happy Wednesday, LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever
Hey,
you might be watching this. Here with another episode of Let's Build Outbound with Bastien. How you doing, man?
fine, fine. And you? How is your mood for the second episode, Chris? Are you more convinced about Outbound now?
Getting there, getting
We
there.
get you, we get you, don't worry.
Yeah, I think again, I like that we're diving into some of my least favorite topics here. Today is another one in terms of lead scoring. Um, One of those things that everybody wants or everybody thinks they want, and then they also think that, oh, I'm just going to buy HubSpot or I'm just going to buy this tool and it's just going to be ready.
Yeah,
And now all of a sudden, my sales team is going to have crystal clear information about who to reach out to and when. And
yeah.
yeah, I think we know full well that that's not how it goes.
So
Um,
funny, like every time I think about feed scoring or lead scoring, but just scoring leads, I'm like, who's the guys or people who are thinking about that at the first place? So, like for example, oh, we need a star, we need a thing to score. So just to like remind you where it come from. So if you guys know who invented the lead scoring, please share in the comment section because I really need to know who is
there's definitely a marketing automation company, I would have to imagine.
it. For sure.
Oh man. Yeah. And I think it's hard for me to, think about most of the time because there's so much data that companies already have about their customers and
Hmm.
like people that they've interacted with that they clearly aren't using to actually create the scoring mechanisms often. It's always from a place of like, okay, starting from what we don't have, let's make a bunch of assumptions. Let's kind of validate things that we want to do instead of things that we like maybe could learn to be
Yeah.
true, right? And that's where, especially when you have, let's say, marketing in charge of building it out. Meanwhile, sales is on the ground having real conversations, knowing, and they could actually build it out, sometimes, but they're busy doing sales, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
sure.
like it creates that disconnect. Meanwhile, leaders are always there to say, okay, this means I could just get more and more leads and then we could just funnel it in the right way, right? So help people, let's take a step back and when done well, let's not focus on all the bad things. When done well, what are the outcomes you're seeing? What does it enable when lead scoring is done well?
So for me, when it doesn't, so if it's done well, you should have more deals per leads contacted by sales. So because what you hire salespeople, what you want who for them is to speak only with people interested. Like that's the basic thing you want. So if people are interested, normally you get more deals. So of course, the sale has to be uh, could has to get some skills, handle the objections, whatever you want, and of course. But at the end, if you do the lead scoring right, you should have more deals per leads contacted. And sales people, since they have more deals, will less piece of marketing teams to get more companies doing like mass cold calling, something like that's not like less repetitive task, more quality task on spending time to convince the right buyer and so on. And also another outcome, I think we should also because this first outcome is about quantity, and I like to have also on the quality. And on the quality, you should have an ACV, annual contract value, higher than before. Uh, that's it's more about fit scoring than lead scoring. For me, lead scoring is more about people that is actually reviewing your solution and like want to speak with the sales. For me, fit scoring, it's more like, okay, this company, we have higher chance to close them, slash we can get a better ACV than the other one. So maybe we can focus on that. So these are the two main outcomes to me when scoring, lead scoring, fit scoring, whatever you want, scoring is working.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Because I think like the point you make is like the quality, right? Like
Every
so much focus is on volume
yeah,
and like, are we getting as many emails as we could be through the, like a great
yeah,
conversation with the Anton yesterday, like so much effort because of the tools that we're using usually or the metrics that different teams have. Like if if the KPI for marketing is number of leads, then it is all about how many people are clicking on the ads. Is everybody converting on this page? Okay, let's reduce all the fields that they need to put in because then we just get the email, but then sales gets a bunch of emails not knowing anything about,
yeah,
the quality isn't there. So now you're wasting like sales time and the customer's time, right? Instead, creating these points, and in the case yesterday, we were talking about landing pages, asking the right questions, right? To really qualify people and help you do things like build scoring mechanisms, understand who they are, not only based on demographic data and, maybe tools
yeah,
like Clay, but by letting them tell you who they are and what they care about,
yeah,
right?
sure.
How about that for leads for scoring?
Yeah, like because when you read a lot of things about lead scoring and so on, you get the idea of okay, so sh a marketing qualified lead should be a lead that is engaged, read a lot of resources from you and so on. But I stumbled like onto different conversation with people and other content, and people say, okay, make it simple. MQL, people requesting for a demo with a sales. Simple as as like really simple. And now the marketing team has like plenty of opportunity to work that lead. And why we want to do that is because the leads from marketing team can be a bit, the ACV should be low. Otherwise, you will have salespeople really speaking to that guys, decision makers going up market and so on. Because don't forget, like if you hire salespeople, your CAC will rise, like skyrocket. So for me, best advice is focus on the up market if you get salespeople. And the marketing team, like you can do a plenty of things, webinars, content, whatever you want, but they have now the action to do plenty of things to score, to raise the score of that leads at certain point where the score is, hey guys, I need to speak with one of your sales. Yeah, it's like it's
Yeah,
often the thing we, I think, forget when we want to implement a solid scoring, or as a marketer, when we work on the content and so on, it's more like, the tofu, mofu, bofu. Like if it's tofu content, you can push that lead to a salespeople. That's incredible. Can do
yeah. Just
that.
because they registered for the
Yeah,
webinar doesn't mean
yeah,
they want to
yeah.
talk to
And
sales,
every
right?
time we do like something, okay, if he attends to this webinar, he gets 5 points, for example. Okay, but what kind of webinar? If it's a webinar about HubSpot Outbound, I should put you like 5 points. But if it's a webinar on how to import LinkedIn contact to HubSpot, frankly, I should give you like 100 points. Not the same points for the same content, because I think people are doing the same thing for product pages versus blog pages. My camera is every time moving. I need to. I don't know.
All
I
good.
don't know.
No worries.
And only my with hand, like my hand is everywhere. So she's like, what should I do?
So, so what are your go-tos? So I like, hopefully you're with me on this, but starting from this endpoint of this world where sales is only talking to people with high interest that are
Mm,
qualified, right? What are your go-tos as far as like coming back from that? What scores, what things are you trying to score in the system that helps you
mm.
get to that clarity?
So for me, when I do score in my HubSpot with our content within Hub Lead, and it's more about how my content is really engaging people rather than giving. Like, I'm the sales at the end, so rather giving me some emails or meetings, I will say. It's more about how does it engage. Uh, like for example, let's say you want like you say to yourself, because now it's going and something is really good and now within HubSpot, it's not really about the score like 25, 55 or 70. It's more about the repartition of your leads around the scale of 0 to 100. And so you can see where your top 25%, what is your threshold. And so let's say you have some contents you're pushing and your threshold is like 30. And so you can go to 100, something like that. It means that maybe not everyone in your database is really engaged with your content. And so the more you can push the threshold up to 80, 90, so the more you really get people really engaged. So like around, like let's say you have 5K contacts in your HubSpot and you're engaging 5K contacts. Um, around when you look at that, like how many are really engaged with your content. And so the lead scoring can really help you for that. And yes, also another thing that was not really possible before, but with the new update of HubSpot, I'm promoting HubSpot, of course, you can create different lead scoring inside HubSpot. So you can, for example, have more lead scoring for this type of segment or this segment. So let's say, for example, you have like one segment for one pain point. I like to have this kind of approach. So for example, me, it will be contact enrichment, and the other pain point will be sales tracking activities. So if you can score this kind of pain point thanks to some contents, and so you're trying to push more contents of this pain point because you see that this guy is joining some webinars, joining some open your emails around that pain point, clicking and so on, rather than the other one. So you can deliver the right content. You can better deliver the right content to this one. So that's how I prefer to use the lead scoring. Rather, uh, again, I'm single doing the marketing plus sales, so it's different when you have a team. When you have a team, you prefer to know when you can hand off the leads to your sales team. But I think the approach can be the same with content segmentation and how your content is really engaging your audience.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and how they are engaging, with it. Um, in terms of like, so you're describing, a lot of context, right, is needed. And yeah, if you have like yourself, either you're in charge of the whole process, so you always know what the score means, generally. But when you have multiple teams, like that's where it's rare where there's the alignment
yeah,
required and everybody was included in the build process where you can just look at a number and everybody's going to know what that means, right? So creating these contextual situations, which is a lot of what HubSpot's been working on, where you can see the trend and you can see exactly what raised the score and what lowered the score,
yeah, sure.
right?
Because
And
it's
you
really
can
hard.
start
Like,
to
no, go for it.
apply
Sorry.
these other layers of fit and segmentation to say like, okay, it's not just okay, they watched 10 videos, they got up to 50 points, I'm going to call them right now. It's actually what What 10 videos did they watch? Did they watch the whole thing?
Mm.
Right? Because that's where you start to apply, like, especially when you get to real volume and salespeople are in a position, a good problem to have, I guess, to have to start to choose. Like, all this stuff starts to add up in terms of, who you reach out to first, and also what this, not just about who's on their desk that day, but like what the outreach needs to look like, right?
Yeah.
What do I need to say in the conversation? Because I'm not saying, and this is the worst when they do this. Hey, I saw you engaged with our white paper. Like, oh, I'm sure you did. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
let
the
and
the
let
one that
me
I've
read that
downloaded.
white paper.
Yeah, the one that I've downloaded and did not read yet. That, right? I
Yeah.
engaged with it. Like, instead, it's like, okay, I see all this stuff on my side. Now I'm asking about a specific problem that I know you have based on what you've been engaging with. And it's just a different level of conversation at that point, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah, that's something, and something like for me also something like for the scoring, it's really important. It's really hard when you're doing marketing to really see your impact around leads. Of course, you can go on analytics, look at how many clicks you got, views, average time they spend on your content, something like that, your views on YouTube and so on. But it's really hard to see in a nutshell, like, okay, what was my global impact for everyone inside my company, because sales can use my marketing content, or for my leads and so on. And because marketing team don't speak a lot with customers, something they should do more, of course, but it's in their job. In their job, we ask them to do some content. We don't ask them to speak with customers because this is the job of the sales. um, and so every time I think every human need to have something to understand, like, okay, what I'm doing, is it really interesting for people? And Let's Going can lead that way, because if you score, for example, the ones that are the most engaged within your content, as a marketer, you can reach them out and ask them some question like, what did you like of my content? But you can pull a list of 10 to 20 contacts and start to just ask them some feedback. And since they follow your content, they will be happy to give you some feedback. You're not trying to sell them your company, your product and services. But as a marketer, you can grow yourself to better understand what your market is wanting. And you have now a list of people interested in your content, and you get feedback. So yeah, I think that's why, like, really, like, for the marketing team, it's something you need to implement and refine time after time, of course, but that's really something important for me.
Yeah. And engage with your own teams who are experiencing, and hopefully this is a relationship you have already with sales specifically, like not just build it and forget it, right? Because
Yeah.
that all these stages where there's a handoff or there's a conversion point, or so much gets lost in, well, sales thinks these are garbage leads. Like, sometimes sales doesn't understand why they have the score that they do, and why this score might be different from that score. And you can reveal a lot of that when, especially the like the bigger organizations, the bigger you get, where it's like, okay, man, this group is nailing it over here, and whenever buyers check out this content, they're very likely to convert or to become customers. But for some reason, when this salesperson or this group engages those same people, like, it's not converting for some reason, right? Maybe that's a group that's focused on a different product or somehow got funneled.
Mm,
Like, being able to take a step back and say, okay, what's actually happening with the scores that we're providing?
yeah.
Like, in talking to sales, like, hey, this group because it happens where like you think you see trends, but then when you ask sales, like, no, it never comes up in conversation, that cool thing that
Yeah,
they watched, right? Because it just got attention and, you know, maybe that's good in some situations, like it created awareness like it needed to, and then the outreach happened, and then, your product's so good that you just focused on talking about that, right? Also helping sales understand, like maybe they could ask about certain things, like what was your experience? Why are you reaching out to me at this point? Like starting to learn from it, right?
yeah, completely. Yeah, because scoring is really kind of a feedback for the marketing team on the quantitative view, not a qualitative, not quality. I mean, you can quality, but it's a bit hard. Quality is better with conversation with your sales and customers. But it's not a feedback from your sales team. You- People like have a misconception of that. It's for me, it's a feedback of your content, not of your sales team. Meaning like you can have a group of lead with a high score because they open a lot and they feed themselves with your content, but that not they are not ready to pay. It's completely different. It doesn't mean like your content is shit. It just means that you're doing your content. But maybe the people are marketing your content uh, are not the right ICP, like too small or maybe too big because they look at your product but they say, okay, how can I fit that in my sales stack, marketing stack, whatever you want. So these are different things. And for me, this part of the thing, it's more about the fit scoring. So for example, in the previous company I worked for, we were targeting e-commerce websites. So we were e-commerce logistic provider, doing logistics for e-commerce websites, stock, prepare the shipments, and set the good for e-commerce website. Um, but we looked at how can we guess how many orders they ship on a monthly basis. So we looked at the technologies, we look at the SEO, domain rank, plenty of things, really like company related. How many employees do they have? Something like that. So these are not linked to the behavior of a person, but more about the characteristic demographic of the company, and then you can really train your fit scoring. Like, for example, you do your fit scoring based on 3 or 4 criteria. You send 100 company to your sales, and you look at how many were ICPs, how many were interested, and you try to do another scoring. You send that to your sales too, and you see the difference. So these are really different things. You need really to separate lead scoring and fit scoring, according to me, uh, because if you mix things at the end, if you mix, you won't have the same answer. Lead scoring, is my content good? Fit scoring, is it right? Is that the right target market for us? Kind of simple things. How I like to think about scoring.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to separate that context just so you know like what variables are working and what aren't, and kind of why. Like this conversation came up yesterday where in the situation you described, your target, your who you think is your target, might be consuming all of your content and giving you so much feedback, yet there's no business like being had. There's no sales conversations. And in the case we were talking about yesterday, there's in the United States, if your target market is like local municipalities, right? Like police, fire stations, that group, that is like 100% public funded,
Mm,
and they have to get grants and things like that. So if you're selling a capital equipment, like if they can't get the funding, they are not buying the product, right? So no matter how good, your value prop is, right? They're going to consume all the content, but they've got to make choices between, this equipment or this other piece of equipment, and that's only if they get the funding. right? So you could see like, hey, a lot of people are like these are great fit scores, but our engagement scores
Yeah.
like are different. And that kind of thing can lead to insight. Okay, instead of talking about our product, we need to teach them how to get funding, like how to write grants. Like that's where helping
Mm.
people, like what job to be done is in the way of moving forward with you. It's not always like selling them the product. They might be sold on the product, but there's this is where we talk, especially in HubSpot world. Is it a change management issue? Like,
Yes.
is purchasing in the way? You know, uncovering that stuff when you start to use these scores properly gets a lot easier, right? Because now we have great comparisons that we can make across the board, right? To help identify like anomalies, right?
Yeah, completely. Completely. Like you really need to have your content. If you're if you're like really product focused, it works, of course, because in your content you can grab the 7-10% of your market maybe that are interested in your in solving the solution, the pain, sorry, solving the pain they have. But if you want to go bigger, it will be hard. So you have to speak of everything. As for me, for example, we're on this show to speak about HubSpot Outbound. The more people I have doing outbound on HubSpot, especially on LinkedIn, the more there will be um, clients for me because they will need this our solution to prospect on LinkedIn. So you have to go deeper and bigger. And I really like the mindset of if they need to get my product, they need funding. So let's teach them how to get funding. Something I need to work on. How before having hub leads, what do they need? How I can
Right.
help them to get that.
Well, as you bring that up, I mean, we all know um, LinkedIn adoption is a huge challenge. It's a ridiculous challenge, but it's a big challenge in terms of, helping people understand what kind of business development
Mm,
tool LinkedIn can be. And that's where anybody that's trying to solve for LinkedIn solutions, um, needs LinkedIn adoption for the thing to be helpful for those people. And that's where sales is farthest behind
yeah,
in terms of understanding the value. And that's where, another story from yesterday is, this company sees you like this post, or this leadership person sees you like this post, and then this policy comes down like, don't do that. Like, I don't like you doing that on LinkedIn. And all of a sudden we're hands off LinkedIn, right? And
wow,
we can't even use it, right? Because there's the digital space, and it's industrial manufacturing. You start to get some traditional, mindsets.
yeah.
Um,
It's
but that
something
is a
like
big part of it, right?
you when I speak to some people, like of course we got some users like telling us. Is your tool for forbidden by LinkedIn or I'm afraid with my account and so on? And we're like, you only have like 200 connection LinkedIn. If you, I mean, why are you so into LinkedIn? Like, if you lose your account, it seems like your life will blow away, but you don't use LinkedIn. Like, you don't post, you don't even interact. You just maybe get some content, but if you go to X, even Instagram, I guess you can see the same content. Of course, on X you can see the same content. So I'm like, what the fuck, guys? So it's just an account. It's just a social platform. Of course, if you have like 20K followers plus, maybe you're afraid because you're driving revenue from your posts and impression, but it's only like maybe less than 1% of people inside LinkedIn. And like, I spoke with someone yesterday and he told me like, okay, do LinkedIn tolerate your product? I say, I don't know, I didn't discuss with LinkedIn, but one thing I know is Apollo is worth like 1 billion, and Apollo has a plugin that is importing contacts from LinkedIn. And if you go to the CGV of LinkedIn, Apollo is not following anything from them. Okay. But it's 1 billion company raised like 200 million or 300 million. I think heavily is okay because they really
Yeah,
don't care about us, you know. But they
yeah,
are still afraid. People are still afraid, and I think this will create a gap between people that are less afraid and this kind of people. And with AI, everything you can do and so on, the minority of people that are not afraid and that open their how to say chakra, open their mindset, you know, we get a huge part of the market. To me.
yeah.
That's
No, this
danger
is
for
this is making
those.
me want to do a wake up with LinkedIn series
Yeah,
too. But that's it. And that I think to bring it back to what we were
yeah,
like the
sure,
topic of the day, it's like that's why the fit scoring is also important, right? Like
yeah,
if I have a lead, yeah, and this is real, like I've got to take this into consideration. If it's somebody from SaaS, let's say, like that immediately tells me like the way they view digital transformation and concepts like that is can be more advanced, not always, right? But this is the whole purpose of the score. Like SaaS is one variable. Which
yeah,
team are they on, right? Uh, have they worked in other industries? Taking that into account versus the manufacturing person that comes in, watches the same content, right? Might have the exact same lead score, but now that the fit score is there, it's at least represents a difference in the approach of I might be, you know, knowing me, I'm still willing to try to climb up the mountain that is manufacturing, but I know I have to climb up the mountain, so I bring the right tools with me. I've got the right mindset in terms of okay, I got to teach about LinkedIn and why it's benefits and why the risk is not what they think it is versus talking about maybe with the SaaS person, I'm talking about, oh, it can integrate with this and this and this. And did you know about these cool things that are happening? It's just like a different conversation, right?
yeah. Sorry, and also with the fit scoring, um, you need to have some people inside the marketing team to start that. But since the fit scoring is very interesting because you're really trying to understand from your customer database um, what are the common things between your customers. So you get, for example, 200, 300 customers. Can we separate these guys into two separate groups? So, for example, with the e-commerce logistics, we had mainly customers shipping small goods. We had some customers with food supplements, custom cosmetics, fashion, uh, toys, for example, things like that. But we found like, okay, these kind of customers, cosmetics, food supplement, toys, they don't have a lot of items, different items. So we can group them into a group, and we can look at, okay, out of this group, can we score a lot of companies having the same type of products, similarities in terms of employee range and so on? And what is our conversion rate compared to the fashion, you know? And you can see at the end, so maybe this one will have more higher conversion rate. And so you can say, okay, how can I double down on this kind of target market? How many do I have in the market in France, for example? So like I don't know, you have like 10,000 companies. So you score them, you store them, and you monitor these kind of companies. Of course, you can have like, for example, I was using Stories. It's a tool that is scanning a lot of companies' websites and giving you the CMS, so Shopify and so on, and also the product type. And the more you score, the more you can store things also into your database, and you can see the trends in your market. Do you get more cosmetics? Do you get less cosmetics? Do you get more companies inside this group A than the group B? Who is growing faster? And thanks with all this knowledge, it won't be perfect, of course, but you get a glimpse of the evolution. So the goal is not to say, I know that I have 2078 companies in my target market. It's more about the evolution, the growth. It's growing, declining, your conversion rate, is it the same as before, and so on. And for me, at the end, fit scoring has a can have a real impact for the company at strategic level. Because let's say, for example, your conversion rate is way better for the fashion, so you can think about new processes, new features that your company can build around this kind of customers rather than the others. So, for example, Hublead, we do have a group of solo founders or small teams more interested into importing contacts and reaching contacts, and we can have like the other group, maybe small teams, medium teams of salespeople, large team of salespeople, more interested into sales activities. So what is your what is the value of this market? What is the value of this market? How many competitors do you have in this market and that market? And you can think about it. And the more you can store everything to your database and monitoring how it's growing and so on, the more you can do impact. You can uh, do impactful strategies on the long term. So for me, it's really interesting also on this strategic thing for that kind of use case. And of course, for the first use case is I want my sales team to spend time with people that I should be that I will be more able to close. For me, fit scoring, if a company has a good fit score, you should have higher chance to close that guy because it's fitting your customer database. It's near it's kind of the same guy who is your customer, your ICP. So your closing rate should be high.
Yeah.
But one
No,
thing
it's
it was hard. It was, do you optimize to be like your customers, or do you optimize to get a better ICV, which normally shouldn't be like your customers? So that's two things for the fit scoring. This can be a problem for me.
yeah.
Uh,
Well, I think that one of the keys is being able to take a step back and
mm,
start to look at the data from that perspective, right? And that's where a lot of companies, hopefully, one of the takeaways today is when you set up this foundation of meaningful scoring, whether it's lead or fit, you also have to take time to step back and say, is it, what does this mean? Like, is it actually working the way we think it is? Because especially when it comes to outbound, in my opinion, and this is where I always like, I have a little twitch when I hear people talking about like Zoom info and Clay and, oh, let's get all this buyer intent data.
yeah,
And it's just outbound, outbound, outbound. All the KPIs are related to calls and emails. And it's like, do we have any KPIs related to debriefs, like closed one debriefs, right? How many of those are we having where we
yeah,
honestly sat down and went through why did we win this deal? Like what happened, right? And that's where it can be, there's so much data like that that people are not even addressing. And that's why I come back to the gold is there. And when you take time to do that, that's how you start to create efficiency,
yeah,
within sales and marketing, right? And you start to just, instead of trying to address the symptoms of either not enough leads or not enough conversion rate or we're losing them here, you start to just like skip past that stuff because everybody starts to understand and be on the same page, and you start to build better, go to market motions, honestly, right? And that's not like this, all this buyer intent data, all that stuff is not going to help you do that,
Yeah, sure. And
right?
it's like, yeah, and because one thing I join with you like 1,000 times, it's when you go outbound, you see the Zoom info, everything, and you're like, oh, I can have like 100K contacts in my database with emails and phone numbers. It will cost like maybe, I don't know, 5K or something like that, but I want everything in my HubSpot. And like, you don't work all of them, you work on maybe like 10% of them at top, 5%, and in 3 months, 30% of your database is obsolete, so you have to redo it again. So you're kind of creating your work at the end, just to work, like you're just so I do agree with you on that, and that's why you have to really like step back. What's your goal? If I do outbound, what do I need to do? Okay, I want to drive more revenue. Okay, but you will have salespeople to call, so your CAC is growing. So you might go to upmarket. Okay, but I don't think upmarket you will have like 10K companies. Normally, when you go upmarket, you should have like 500 companies, and you're working on that. Do your product can support upmarket? Yes, no. How can we bring a product team to help the sales to go up market? You have to think about that too. So, and the process will be different and so on and so on. So I do agree with you on that.
Yeah, and that has such a powerful effect on it can have a powerful effect on really galvanizing teams in that like at that point you can look at the skill set that you have on your teams. And let's say marketing has been really focused on, top of funnel. They're like, okay, sales, we figured out an ABM motion that we need to focus on these 10 to 20,
Mm,
accounts, right? The skill sets of marketing, you can use it in a way now to create these VIP experiences, for these 10 to 20 accounts, which does not have the skill set to do that outside of a one-to-one conversation usually. But that's where once you have the data to support that, it's like, okay, we were planning this webinar series or this episodic podcast. Now, instead of whatever we were going to do to just generate awareness, we're going to invite those 10 to 20 companies on the podcast, start to build the relationship in a different way and support this different goal, right? And
mm,
how often is it where we don't sync on those goals? So sales is just focusing on these 20 companies,
yeah,
marketing's doing whatever the hell with their podcast, and it's not impacting anything, right? But that's where that kind of effort can just be just applied slightly differently to have just a monumental impact
yeah,
on
sure.
what's best for the company, right? So this is another topic we could go on about all day. But I hope it was helpful, for people out there. If there's one thing, when it comes to scoring of any kind, like that people, could go do like right now, what would you suggest?
Um, I would definitely suggest to, as a marketer, raise yourself, go next to your salespeople, take the desk, put the, put your computer, sit down, and stay with them. You need to get feedback from them as quickly as possible on the content they show to their customer, on the pain points they understand from their customers, uh, which kind of company do they outreach, how do they find this kind of company, and so on. And our job as marketers is to take all this manual work and to think about it and say, okay, where is the Pareto law inside that? Where do we find 20% for the 80%? And how can I save them time with lead scoring or lead scoring at the end? But if you just sit in a desk or in a room and you don't have salespeople are people that love to speak and hate writing. Nothing more. 90%. Of course, not everyone is like that. But salespeople like to have interaction. So you have to and to go to them and learn their language and use their language. And it's your job after to distill into a new your language in marketing team, but you have to go where the sales are. Yeah.
Yes. Go
Even if they
learn
are
from
doing cold
sales. Go
calling a
talk
lot,
to sales.
even if they are doing a lot of cold calling and it makes you crazy because you just want to concentrate, you can go to your room after, but you need to spend like 2 or 3 hours on every day, I guess, with your sales team. It's
Yes.
very important.
No, I think that's great advice and a great way to build outbound.
Sure.
So find those opportunities for your company and your team, and let's grow. Have a great day,
Yeah, let's
everybody.
go.
Awesome. I think you just gave me an idea for a better close.